Hey folks, David Stewart here. So, I canceled my World of Warcraft account. Now, I'm going to go pretty far afield in this video, so stay with me. Why am I starting with this? Well, I got to start somewhere, and this is a good place to start. I canceled my World of Warcraft account. Is that because WoW Classic, after literally years of me hyping it up, is not meeting my expectations? Is the nostalgia evaporating into thin air and making me realize that I actually didn't want that? No. Actually, I've had a great time playing Classic WoW. One of the best times I've had playing WoW in a number of years. But I'll put it like this. So, I don't know if you've ever gotten back with like an ex-girlfriend at some point. So like, if you imagine you get back with an ex-girlfriend, or if you have, and it seems like things are fixed, like she's worked on her problems, she's got it back together, the relationship's going really good, you're getting along, it's like it was before but better, and then then you find out she's a card-carrying member of the Communist Party. That is why, let's just call it what put me over the edge for sure to cancel my WoW account, was that, I was with a card-carrying member of the Communist Party, meaning not only can it not really be the same as it was, because it's a very good experience. It's not the same as it was, and I said it wouldn't be the same as it was. But it's with somebody who's different, somebody who's changed. Blizzard is not who they used to be. So yes, the Hong Kong issues definitely put me over the edge as far as canceling my WoW account. And the thing is, it's not like I'm a person who really cares about esports. I don't care about esports at all. I don't really care about shoutcasting. I don't care about any of that stuff. I care about what Blizzard did to the people that were involved. The actual people suffered negative consequences for having political speech. And of course, selfishly, I could just have my characters deleted and my WoW account thrown into oblivion for, making this video. So it just kind of made me wake up that not only can you not go back, but you're not with the same person anymore. But it's a great place for me to leap off, and I want to start there and go to some interesting places and talk about nostalgia. And nostalgia in particular for my generation, or the people who are very close in age to me. I don't know if you want to call this Generation Y, or like the millennials, maybe older millennials or younger Gen Xers. With those people who were born in the late 70s to say mid 80s, nostalgia is a very powerful force, and these were the people who are really interested in Classic WoW, in my opinion. These are people like me who are in their mid 30s-ish, and we remember really, really fondly playing World of Warcraft back in 2005. I have a ton of nostalgia for playing the game, and I can tell you, going back, both playing on private servers and playing live, that the game design really holds up, but it can't ever be the same as it was. And it's not just because everything's different. It's not because they're doing the code different. It's not because the monsters are different. It's not because the graphic engine is different. That's not what makes it different. What makes it different is that you are different. And the time and the context in which those events are happening is very, very different. You can't go back to 2005 and make it the same. A pre-Facebook world, a pre-YouTube world, really. A world where you made connections in World of Warcraft that felt so much more meaningful than they do today, partly because compared to the context of today, the meaning was there to be gathered up. And this brings me, I guess, to the thesis of this video, which is the power of nostalgia for the Generation Y people, the older millennials. It's really a crisis of meaning. And our nostalgia, the reason our generation is so focused on nostalgic thought, nostalgic things that are in the past, we look backwards so much to our warm childhoods because of a lack of meaning in our lives, and a crisis of meaning, not just now, but in the past. And I'd like to explain how I experienced this. Now, a couple things I want to say before I start talking about some other nostalgic things and talking about this thesis and this idea. As I was going through this process of I think I'm actually going to cancel this Vanilla WoW thing that I really wanted to do so bad, and I'm having so much fun doing. a lot of things came up in my social media circles and in my life to make me think a little bit deeper about this idea. And so one of them was a thing that popped up, I guess, today or yesterday, by a writer named Brian Niemeyer, and it's a Gen Y tale. I'm going to link it down below, and I'll talk about it a little bit. But got me connecting with some other authors that are around my age, born in the early 80s, maybe late 70s, maybe all the way to the mid 80s, and we have a lot of the same feelings. The nostalgic experiences that are described in Brian's story are very, very familiar and evoke a lot of very familiar feelings that I've had at various times in my life. And I think they're pretty common, especially for men who are around my age. I also was reminded of one that I did too that was about the childhood of the millennials, and I'll link that one down below. It's called Echo Box. You may have either heard me read it on the channel or have read it on my website at some point. That one deals with some of the same issues, but from a different angle, a more child-focused angle, rather than one that is nostalgic, that's looking backwards. It's about looking backwards to these various times. So the millennials, or the Generation Y, we are a generation that was raised by institutions, media, and each other. So very, very common. This is in Brian's story. You're born. Very quickly, you end up in daycare or preschool, where you spend most of your time. Very early in life, you're spending most of your time not with your parents. You're spending it with peers primarily, and peers are not the best guides for developing minds, although you can develop social skills with peers. And so you're kind of learning by blind rote. You're learning through trial and error how to operate social relationships, because you're not with an adult who's managing that stuff. You go to elementary school, you spend all day in elementary school, and not only do you spend all day in elementary school, you spend most of that day parked at a desk where you don't want to be, doing things you don't want to do, not even interacting with other kids. And maybe you have to go to daycare after school. So it comes down to it, and then you get home and you have to do homework. Comes down to it, you're only really getting to see your parents a couple of minutes a day, maybe an hour. You're just not spending any time with your parents at all. And what you have instead is a very rich life, a life that's full of toys, the best toys that were ever made. And I can tell you, like Brian said that in the story, I'm like, that's right on point, because I kept a lot of my toys from my childhood, partly from nostalgia, but partly because they were really good toys. So I have big boxes. I had like all the Ninja Turtles, and my son plays with them, and they've held up for 30 plus years, and they're still great toys. I have the Starcom stuff. I have all kinds of cool toys from the 1980s that, boy, they really don't make them like they used to. They're some of the best toys ever. And then we also had Nintendo. We had this extremely affluent existence, even if you were in just merely the middle class. In fact, I had friends who grew up in apartments, but they had like every Nintendo game. They still lived a life that, compared to, say, someone outside the first world, is so affluent. It's so rich. It's almost incomprehensible. So our life was filled with toys and filled with material goods that gave comfort and entertainment and were interesting and were nice and were good. But what we lacked was the deeper bedrock of our lives, which was going to be being raised by our parents and gaining the meaning of tradition and family and all of those things. The nuclear family certainly, I think, contributes to that. As America's gone on, we have this thing called the nuclear family. It's like mom, dad, kids is the unit, rather than mom, dad, kids, aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins, second cousins, first cousins once removed. Like a huge family that's completely interconnected and lives close to one another and relies on each other. We get very atomized, and that was definitely my experience growing up, because all of my family on both my mom and my dad's side, they live in East Texas. And my mom and my dad went and moved out to California when I was very young, after my dad got out of the military. And there we've been, to where, like right now, my grandfather, who's in his 90s, we recently put him into hospice. because he's not doing that good. But I realized, do I need to go see him, again, and I go see him every once in a while. And I'm like, I've seen him so few times compared to a person who is normal. I'm like, how many times have I gone to visit my grandpa? I'm like, has it been 10? Like 10 times? And I talked to someone else and they're like, yeah, I saw my grandparents like 3 times this week. My kids see their Oma and Opa every week. And they see my mom every single week, at least once a week, if not more. They grow up with their grandparents. They see their cousins every week, right? I never saw cousins. I saw cousins like a couple times in my life because of this. So it's a lonely existence. It's an existence without that connection. And what replaces that is the material goods. So the millennial generation, especially my age, was the first generation. While the Xers might have been the first ones raised in daycare, I feel like we were the first ones raised entirely in a completely materialistic and material-focused universe. A universe where there is nothing spiritual and where ideas of spirituality are fanciful and divorced from reality. Even me, growing up in a religious family, I could see this transformation happening. And I'm able to contextualize what I've seen. I went to a very conservative church as a kid, Mennonite, which is a Anabaptist. We're talking, pretty conservative, I could say. I don't like that word conservative, but very dogmatic. Not dogmatic, but not liberal. We'll put it that way. And I saw this church of very strictly defined ideals and dogmas transform over the years into a church that was just can be completely interchanged with any other American evangelical church, First Baptist, whatever denomination. There's all these little Protestant dominations all over America, and they all don't really stick to any kind of doctrine. There's nothing that defines them from being different from one another in any significant way. And then they view any denomination which has a significant difference, like say Seventh-day Adventist. It's like they're weird. They go to church on Saturday. Those are weirdos over there, Or like the Catholics worship saints and they're weird, It's like they have turned the mysticism of traditional religion into an inversion to where it's completely materialistic. It's only focused on the material. So I saw this transformation happen to where there was no core left. And kind of like in this story that Brian writes, it's just like one day I just stopped going to church. And I remember in my early 20s, I think I went to a Trinity Mass, and I was awestruck with the difference between that and what was comparable in a Protestant church. Whereas in a Protestant church, everything is focused on your immediate emotional state. Not so in the Latin rite, in the Roman rite. It was I never felt till I saw that I was like, I am in a religious ceremony. The people who are executing this religious ceremony believe in what they are doing. They believe in the mystic nature of what they're doing. They believe in the sacraments. They believe in the dogmas of the church. They believe in God. Everything is true when you're watching that. And the spirit is alive. The God is a real presence. And so it helped me put everything into context, what I was seeing. This transformation and this bleeding out of meaning. And so my thesis really, the millennial nostalgia is a crisis of meaning. Our nostalgia is for the moments in our lives which had meaning because our lives had been stripped and turned into materialistic kind of hoop jumping games. So if you remember really strongly, oh man, I used to love playing Magic the Gathering with my friends. And I did. I loved playing Magic the Gathering. We had a big bookshelf. We had all our decks. Pull them off the bookshelf and play, and we experiment with decks, but go trade new cards, buy new cards off the internet sometimes. At one point we were doing that, and just make new decks and play, playing D&D, playing whatever it was going to be. I was like, man, I remember that so positively. I have such a positive memory of that. Why? Well, because that social interaction was social. and it wasn't atomized and it wasn't artificial, and it felt like it had meaning. It was a moment of meaning in a world of nihilism. And even if you feel nostalgic for, say, a video game, right? Oh man, I remember that ending of Final Fantasy IX, right? And it's like, man, it was a great ending. I have such nostalgia for sitting down and playing Final Fantasy IX. It's because you're escaping into a world of meaning. That's really what escapism is nowadays. Escapism is not just, I want to escape from the mundane world, but I want to escape from a world of mundane materialism to a world of deep meaning. That's why fantasy is so powerful now. It's why it's so important. It's why it's such a big genre, is because we need to escape from the nihilistic materialist world, the world where everybody is convinced that there's no such thing as the spirit. There's no human soul. We have to escape from that to something where there is human soul. There's magic. There's things which are possible and that are supernatural. There's meaning, right? We're trying to escape to meaning. We have nostalgia for our old movies because our old movies conveyed unto us meaning. Why do we love Star Wars so much? We love Star Wars because Star Wars had deep, deep meaning, and our lives wanted that meaning. And that story of Luke Skywalker having a meaningful experience, we lived it through him. We wanted to have that meaningful experience too. Instead, we had to wake up at 6 a.m., go to school, sit in a desk and repeat facts that we didn't care about, go home, do a bunch of busy work homework, or go to soccer practice, go to bed. And we played with our toys in the margins, or we played Nintendo on Saturday, and so our nostalgia was for the Nintendo on Saturday, not for any kind of other meaningful experience. It was for those moments of meaning awash in a sea of nihilism. And that's the problem with nostalgia. Nostalgia also has a heavy filter. All memory does. We discard the things which you don't think are useful. We discard the things which don't have meaning, and we remember very strongly the things which do have meaning. So the further away we get in time from the things which gave us meaning, the more nostalgic we get for them, and the more powerful they seem in retrospect. Those nights spent playing Magic the Gathering, those nights spent playing D&D, the nights spent just drinking beer on your porch, jamming with your friends in the garage. All of these things seem to have a heightened meaning because they did have meaning compared to the stuff right now. What you don't remember about college is how boring the classes were, and how garbage your term papers were, and all the bad relationships that you don't even remember. And Brian even has that. Hey, I thought you were on a date. This, I'm not going to do the spoilers, but it's like he doesn't remember every girl he dated, because it's like occasionally I remember, I'm like, oh yeah, right? It's like, I remember that girl barely, right? You just discard the things which don't have the meaning, and you attach and you remember the moments that were powerful. And that's, I think, something that's very, very important for my generation. Now we see corporations hitting that nostalgia harder than ever, taking it back to vanilla World of Warcraft. Vanilla WoW, it's the big thing. They're hitting your nostalgia hard. Guys, remember how awesome it was? Level up, explore Azeroth, get your tier 1, get your tier 2, go through all these raids. Yes, it was so good. I want to do it again. I want to live it again. And the game design is still great, but the company is a different company. It's not the same person. And they kind of show their hand a little bit. It's like, yeah, you're getting back with, it's not the same person. You can't go back because all the people are gone, right? Your guild is gone, but not just that, the people who made the company are gone. You look at the recent Star Wars trailers, and they're all nostalgia. They didn't reveal anything about the story. Now, part of it might be that they were still trying to figure out what the story was when they were making the teaser trailers, and they're doing all this at the 11th hour. But probably just as likely is that they know that the nostalgia is a more powerful marketing tool than presenting something new and exciting. Rather than presenting something new and exciting, we're saying, hey, remember the good times. Remember how good it used to be. Remember how much you liked to put in that VHS on a Saturday morning and watch Empire Strikes Back. Well, guess what? Lando Calrissian's coming back in this movie. Yeah, and now in the latest teaser trailer, which I didn't even do a video on, all they show is just scenes from the other movies, from the original trilogy, and one from the prequels. They're like, oh yeah, there's be some young guys that like the They're like them prequels. Put a scene there for them. They're not even trying to show you something new and interesting and compelling and original. They're just trying to play your nostalgia. That's why you see so many reboots, requels. It's because nostalgia is really powerful for this generation that I am, the people in our 30s. We're the ones who have a little bit of money now. We're the ones who have the jobs, I guess, to be able to do this stuff. And I think it's powerful for us because we had that entirely materialistic upbringing. It's a very wealthy upbringing. We were raised by the wealthiest generation ever, the boomers, and given everything. But what we weren't given was meaning. And what we weren't given was times spent with our parents and our extended family that taught us things of the past. It's just, and it's missing from my life, and I know it's missing from the lives of lots of people like me. So thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. If you're watching this and it's current, Voices of the Void is free right now on Amazon, so go grab that Amazon version. Please just download it and read it. It's free. I will have the links down below in the description. You can pre-order my newest book. It's called City of Silver. It's a high fantasy book with guns. Hopefully you'll like it. Make sure you're on my mailing list, dvspress.com/list, if you want to get that. I'm trying to do new original things. I call this Aliens Meets Lovecraft, so there might be a little bit of nostalgia in it for you too. It's okay. Nostalgia's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to realize that you can't always go back. You have to look at why that had meaning and what other things could give me a similar good experience. I think that's what I want to think of positive going forward. So that's my thesis. Most of the millennial nostalgia is really a crisis of a lack of meaning. I'll see you guys next time.